and welcome to this episode of People Are Animals Too, Darn It. I'm your host, Mandy Evans, and with me today I have Eric Ridgway. This is complicated. He is a licensed clinical professional counselor. Welcome, Eric.
Hi, Mandy. It's good to be back on your show. This is wonderful that you're doing this.
Yeah, thank you for coming back. We appreciate it. So I think it's really important that we start out by you telling the audience a little bit about who you are.
Boy, I could go in so many directions. So I am a counselor, and I have a passion for animals. So I work with people, and I'm not completely animal focused in my work with people, but I think that the people who are able to have the best connection with animals are often having better, healthier connections with people and their community. And we're seeing more and more people realize the benefits of relationships with animals. So I see my work and my passion dovetailing well together.
Yeah, this is a good plug for the human-animal bond there.
I think it's leads to so much greater health and happiness, those who do have connection with animals.
Well, it's kind of fun to be in an industry that a lot of people don't really view it that way, like that we're kind of the connectors, but that's how I definitely look at it, is that it's so much about getting people and animals together. It's the magic. That's how magic happens.
I've actually been talking to my clients very specifically about letting love in, and we do it naturally with kittens and puppies and dogs and cats. We don't shy away from a dog or a cat loving us or giving love to a dog or a cat. And yet we can shy away from, can we really care about each other unless we know each other for a long time, as if we should be suspicious. And we don't do. I visit with dogs anywhere I go. I could travel to any state, any country. And if the dog looks friendly, I'm happy to visit with the dog. And most people are. And it's just interesting how there's this ease that animals often bring out in us, which, again, as a community, we as a human species can benefit from what animals role model and teach us.
Yeah. And you kind of did a segue for me because you said suspicious. And I just wanted to, so I'm a part of a lot of Facebook groups, and there's these wonderful people in animal welfare who, right now we're in the middle of the COVID pandemic, and I always joke that I say middle. Could
we
be
don't
beginning,
know, right?
I mean, who knows?
But we will get through this.
Oh, absolutely. Yep. So there's these great people, and they're really connecting now, which is it's very makes me really happy to see that all these different shelters that are all over the country are all coming together to ask questions. And some of the themes that you see in the posts are interesting because they're almost as though we get in our own way of doing our work. Like we put barriers up. And I can give you some examples. There was one about fostering. Fostering, when you take a pet in, actually you fostered a lot of dogs in your time. And a foster fail. Do you know what a foster fail is?
Explain it how you're thinking of it.
Foster
I can make a guess, but it's a guess.
Is when you fall in love.
Oh, well, that's a wonderful thing. I support it immensely. I think of it as a success.
I know. So I was talking to someone recently that said, we really need to rename that, right? From the shelter perspective, it's like, oh man, like we just lost one of our foster families because potentially they may not be able to take another animal in. And one of the rules that this shelter had set was that you have to foster at least twice before you're allowed to have a foster fail.
I don't support that.
Yeah, and so it's like, well, here your ultimate goal is to find pets homes, and yet you put, these regulations that actually literally prevent them from finding a home. And so that's one idea. The other one was someone posted that, what's your policy around adopting out dogs to families that have electric fences? What was the other one? Oh, a food bank. How do you monitor your food bank, and how often do you let people have food, and do you, what information do you collect from them, and all of this, where when you look at it and you really look at what our role is to help animals be in healthy, happy homes. And whether or not someone has their animal spayed or neutered or vaccinated, to not feed that animal. Based off that seems counterintuitive, but yet we constantly make these rules. And I'm just wondering what advice or what we can talk about that can help people understand how it is counterintuitive, like how that isn't really accomplishing our mission.
So wonderful topics, Mandy. When you talk about humans getting in our own way, this is the nature of our species. And so we have to become wise enough that we can figure out how we get in our own way so that we can stop doing it. Because all of us do, but we can do it much less as we become aware. So when we're looking for animal welfare and to find good homes for animals, I think it's important that we look for good homes and not perfect homes, because perfect doesn't exist. And this, I see this in my work with humans in counseling, because they're not going to find a perfect friend. They're not going to have perfect kids. They won't have perfect parents. They won't have a perfect spouse. It doesn't exist. And there will not be perfect homes for animals. There will be shortcomings in all people that we ever meet. There'll be shortcomings in all homes. We don't need perfect. What we need is genuine caring and willing to make an effort and grow and learn, because all of us are on a path of growing and learning. None of us have learned it all. So I like your theme, and I add, my contribution is, let's look for loving homes for animals, not perfect homes. We're going to get lost if we look for perfect homes. And if we look for our friends to be perfect, we'll end up being very alone, because we won't have friends. We will find shortcomings in all people. And so I personally don't want to look for all the negative, whether it's in individuals or families or communities. I'm looking for what's good.
Which is a more optimistic way of looking at things.
It's a much happier way to go through life. And, you asked me a little bit about me. I want to enjoy my life. Mm-hmm. I want life to be fun. And part of this comes from, I'm willing to disclose this, in my childhood, I was very depressed. I was seriously depressed. I don't ever want to go back there again. So I'm consciously looking for the positive in the world, because it's out there every day. There is also negative out there in the world every day. For those who are looking for the negative, they will find it. I'm not going to do that. By conscious choice, I'm looking for the good. And what's wonderful is when I put good out into the world, whether it's to a strange dog that I haven't met before or people that I haven't met, almost always the response is positive back to me. Mm-hmm. And if we put negative out to the world, well, we're probably going to receive more negative coming towards us than those people who are putting positive out there.
So part of the discussion that's happening right now is on this concept that we have considered ourselves animal shelters for years and years, and that right now we can't have animals in our shelters. And the movement is to kind of go towards this animal social services model.
I love it. Sounds wonderful. Say more.
Yeah, so it means that we're looking at supporting a family as a whole. We're looking at making sure that we are supporting animals in our community before they ever need to come to a shelter. But in order to do that, we really need to make a psychological shift in our thinking. There are shelter leaders right now that will say, and I appreciate that they say it, because I think it's good that it's being talked about. I don't trust my community.
Oh no!
Yeah, like I don't want to adopt my community. We don't have good community, or we can't do that program here. My community won't accept it, and it's almost as though we're, I guess, the only thing I can think of is that we kind of putting that wall up of how do you nurture something that you aren't embracing? Like, see what I mean?
I do, and I have a multitude of responses to what I'm hearing you say. If we look for the good in people, that brings out the good in them. If we look for the bad in people, unfortunately, it doesn't usually bring out the good in them. When I think ill of that person, they feel it.
Yeah.
And that doesn't make them smile more when they feel that someone's seeing them in a negative light. So I look for the good in people. And when people feel like someone is seeing their goodness, they respond to that. They respond really positively. This is a powerful medicine. This is a magnetic attraction that people want to be seen as of value and good. So if there's someone saying our community is not really healthy, I want to suggest that they switch their thinking to our community is growing and it's really exciting because we're moving in a positive direction. It's just a very different feel.
Yeah.
And people will respond to that much more positively.
Well, and looking, I think, at the small things that you see your community doing, let's say that you have a dog walk and all these dogs come out for a walk and they might be on ropes instead of leashes, or it shows that they're connected with their dogs. So you build kind of off of that foundation that you have a loving community, and then how do you influence them with support, nurturing into the community that you feel is great.
You're mentioning something that's making me think of something that we've never talked about, and I'm going to bring in. I lived in Africa for almost a year, and it was before I was a mental health professional. But Africa has never left me, and I saw some of the happiest children I have ever seen in my life in by far the poorest situation I've ever seen in my life. So I do not at all buy we need wealthy communities to have happy animals. I don't buy that at all. We don't need wealthy communities to have happy and very healthy children. It's about love and acceptance and belonging and connection. So if there's a community that doesn't have the resources that another one, we may see exceptional bonding going on. It would be a falsehood to think less money means less love or connection. I think that possibly it could be even the opposite. The communities that have less resources, that companion animal, the love from that animal becomes really important. I've certainly seen it with families where there are struggles in the family and the children have an incredible bond with the animals because the animals are so good at unconditional love.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's important. Like that's it's kind of hard for us to explain. We have a donor who said, if you could show me a study of how your work impacts children, then you'll see more money from me. And I'm not sure I don't think that if there is a study, let me know, because it's really hard because if you're not really an animal person, you miss out on understanding that connection is so important.
So I don't do studies. I work with people. I like working with people, and I'm not going to do the studies. I'm interested in reading studies, but I'm not going to do them. What I can tell you is my experience is that I have been writing more clinical authorizations for people to have their pet accompany them to college because that student will do better in college, adjusting to college, more likely to stay in college, will get better grades because they have their pet. And that could be a dog, it could be a cat, it could be a rabbit, because that's the most recent one that I've done is a rabbit. The connection there creates a sense of security, which is calming to our nervous system. And if our nervous system is really anxious, and I'm a very happy, friendly, confident human being, but I can remember the first 2 weeks when I went to college, and college ended up being the happiest time of my life, just absolutely fabulous. But the first 2 weeks, I was anxious, I was nervous, I'm away from home. It grew out of that relatively quickly. But those who have the security of a companion animal, it's just wonderful for them psychologically. And the families that the children are not going to college, they're just at home and they're of whatever age, those children get great psychological benefit from their relationship with, for some kids, that's who they tell their secrets to.
Oh, yeah.
That's who gets the whole story. It may not be brother or sister or mom or dad, but the pet hears all the secrets.
I have an innovation idea, that little microphone reading devices in collars. Okay, so if we were to go back to the beginning, and because I think that nobody wants... I think that all of us have the positive intention. We're in this work to do the best we can for animals.
Absolutely.
And so I'm hoping that this episode will help them, people in general. And when I talk about this, I'm not putting myself like I'm above anybody, because I go through it every day. The difference is that I recognize it now. And then I can say, oh my gosh, no. Why would I make that rule? Okay, wait, what's driving my decision making behind that rule? And so if we can kind of talk a little bit about how do people do that? How do they take a moment and say, does it really matter whether people, have a valid driver's license and have their animals spayed and neutered? The goal to having animals spayed and neutered, that is one of their priorities and one of their goals. But is that how we're going to get there? By withholding food from a food bank? So how do we help people understand how to recognize policies, procedures, I would call barriers, to being able to help animals?
So Mandy, I want to start responding in a very individual way. The biggest influence that we have on other people is who we are. It's how we're looking at that person. And so I have worked with people who have spent significant amounts of time in prison, and they come out of prison and they had done bad things to get into prison. And I look at them as valuable people who have not perfect lives, as I want to be viewed. I want to be viewed as valuable, and I don't have a perfect life. I don't know anyone who does have a perfect life. But I see people as valuable. I see animals as valuable. If we're looking at another individual and not starting from a place of, I see their value, that's going to influence everything. And so some people have said, Eric, have you been scared of some of those really big guys that you've worked with that have had serious anger problems? I'm like, no, they're wonderful. We hug. And they're like, really? He looks so scary. Well, yeah, you don't want to be on his wrong side. That's a potentially very assertive person. But when I see them as a good person, they shine, they respond to that. So my invitation to shelters and animal organizations out there, think about, how are you looking at the people? Because unless you individually or you as an organization can save all the animals, which I don't think is possible, we're trying to influence people, and we most effectively influence them by viewing them in the most positive light possible. And I guarantee they're all imperfect, but so are we. And if we're coming across as judgmental of their imperfections, with some of those people I was just mentioning, that would be dangerous for me. For me to be viewed as I'm judging them as I'm superior. They're flawed, and certainly they've done some bad things. They're felons. And, I haven't ever had a felony. But if I take this, I'm better than they are, it sets up a disconnect. That's a good example of getting in our own way to start a disconnect that's not needed there at all.
Yeah, I heard a story yesterday that someone said, when people come to adopt from me, I start out with the mindset that you better prove you're good enough.
Oh, no.
Now,
and so people will feel that.
Yeah, and we're moving away from it. I think the hiring processes are helping as well. But I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, that any of the things that have held me back are usually based in my own insecurities. And we're all unique. Like, we've all had our own.
Yes.
Yeah, we've had our own experiences, and some people have lived different lives, and so we view things from that filter. But I know for me, I will go through this like, oh, if I, when that happened last time, this is what happened. And it really takes having a good, solid team around you of people that will support, like even just talking about like, is this rule serving us?
Right,
What's the,
right.
and so having a good support system, but that also means that everyone has to feel this sense of equality. And we were talking about this too, that we look at equality as though it's, the people that your skin color is different, whatever. But really, it comes down to just saying that no matter if you have a degree and I don't have a degree or whatever, that we are equals.
So I'm really liking what you're saying. We all have value. So when you talk about equality, what I translate in my brain is we have value. Everyone has value. And when we view someone as they have value, this dog has value, this dog has value, this dog that's different, this cat, we all have value. And it doesn't matter. When we see the value in others, they respond to it.
Yeah. And community service, that we used to make our community service people wear orange vests when they came to do their time.
So these are people that have gotten in trouble with the law, and the legal system has said part of your rehabilitation will be to give back to the community in this way. And these are not bad people from my perspective. These are people who have made mistakes. We've all made mistakes. These are good people. They're very caring people. Some of them are hugely compassionate and sensitive. And if we view them as valuable, then they will do very well most of the time.
Well, we used to make them wear vests, orange vests.
Which makes them stand out and look different.
And then we would have like a pizza party, and they weren't allowed to participate in it. I know it feels
we learn as we go. We've moved beyond that, I hope.
Yes. And so now we encourage people when they're just say thank you. I mean, we should really appreciate. I know that they got in trouble, but it's a blip of time. But, thank you for doing your community service with us.
Yes.
It could be somewhere else, and they came to us, and thank you.
So, Mandy, I really like the perspective that you're offering, because I know for certain that if organizations put out an energy from the team, from the group of people, of we view everyone as valuable, and that energy gets put out to everyone, those organizations will thrive way more than the organizations that are coming from suspicion, from concern about are they good enough, because that's not bringing to them what they're wanting. It's bringing to them what they're not wanting.
So all of this, like moving in this new direction, pushing your team in a different direction, staying optimistic, staying hopeful, it really comes down to a few things, which is being optimistic.
Absolutely.
Finding the value in people. Mm-hmm. What we discussed last time, which was finding that common ground so that you can influence. And then there's one more thing that we haven't talked about. And that's that change and change takes time.
Absolutely.
And sometimes, this happens where I get a physical response to it, is you'll see something and maybe it's a dog that does have a rope instead of a collar, and the person's maybe pulling on the dog. And my instinct is like, oh, well, no, you shouldn't do that. But it takes your influence away, right? If you go to them and say, what are you doing? Like, you shouldn't do that, or you definitely are abusing your dog, and we need to take your dog away from you. Influence is the long game. Like,
yes.
And helping them understand in a nice way, like, oh my gosh, your dog is so cute. You know what? We have free collars in the shelter. You want me to get you one? Like, I'd be happy to give you one. Like, you just have this different conversation. It doesn't happen overnight. You're not going to get the outcomes you want. Change
is a gradual process. It's true for us as individuals. It's true for marriages. I do a lot of marriage counseling. Human relationships don't change like this. That's not how they work. Thoughts don't change instantaneous. Practices don't change right away. So if and I'm very biased in favor of animal welfare organizations, if animal welfare organizations take the long-term view, they're going to be more successful in the big picture. Short term, there's going to be drawbacks. There's going to be shortcomings, mistakes. That's life. Mm-hmm. And with my organization, which is a counseling business, but other organizations that I started in my community, I made clear we're all going to make mistakes and that's okay. So don't even worry about making mistakes. We expect there's going to be mistakes. It's okay. It's part of the process. And we need the mistakes to be there. It's how we grow and learn. So it's really a shift in viewing learning and growing as a journey for the rest of our lives. All of us are learning. And what's interesting is when we give a chance to someone who has less background or training in an area where we may have animal welfare and abundance of training, they can be grateful if they're being treated as valuable and not as less than while we educate them.
Right.
Because nobody wants to be talked to like, you're so dumb, let me school you. But oh, I love how much you love your dog. Maybe that dog being on a rope is saving the dog's life because the dog wants to run after cars, which is really dangerous, and they don't have a leash, and this is the loving thing that they're doing.
Right. Seeing the good.
Looking for the good.
Yeah.
And when we love someone else's animals, it's really easy for them to move to trust us. And I'm terrible is what I'm saying, but I will see a person walking a dog, and I'm almost always way more interested in the dog than I am in the person. And I'll ask, can I pet your dog? And people are almost always very friendly, unless they're in a rush somewhere, very friendly. And then it's like it creates a safety between the people. And if I were to just go up to the person and start talking, they may be more concerned, who is the stranger? But when we connect through the dogs, animals are such valuable leaders in us doing connection better. And animal welfare organizations have the benefit of learning from this. And I'm saying be as positive as you can. Approaching a dog in a negative energy way, the dog will react. People are no different.
Yeah.
It's really no different.
It's very true. It's very true. But we tend to put a lot of emphasis and a lot of work into how to better support animals and just look at people like they're butt heads.
If we really want to make a difference for animals in the big picture, we have to work with the people.
Yeah,
and this is why I appreciate that you want to bring on a professional counselor, someone whose career for over 30 years is working with people. That's what's going to make the difference for the animal's safety, well-being, happiness.
And you can't move forward with an animal social services model unless you really start to dig in and understand people, because it's a part of the picture.
Absolutely.
Well,
I want to mention something that I probably should have mentioned at the beginning, but it didn't even cross my mind. So yes, I work with people, but in the past, many years ago, I was a volunteer at the animal shelter, which I still am, but I was also on the board of directors because I was passionate about supporting the animals. And the board asked me to be the president, not for my animal skills, but for my people skills. I was asked to be the president. And I felt very honored, and that felt really good. Mm-hmm. But it's about working with people to help the animals.
Yeah. And you were the board president when the organization went from being a euthanasia focused organization to no-kill.
I am an optimist. I believe that good things can happen, and I want to give credit to all the people out there who have carried on, because I played a small role, and it's those who have come after that have really made this organization, the local Panhandle Animal Shelter, so incredibly successful. I played a small role. I am an optimist. I worked with a team of people, and people responded well to the positive energy, and this community has responded really well, and it's what your team is doing. I'm now a small volunteer.
Yeah, well, we thank you for making the impact that you made and that you continue to make, and working with our team and to participate in podcasts so you can help people throughout the nation that are really trying to do the best they can to support animals. Well, I appreciate you joining me today, and I'm sure that we will be recording another one shortly.
It is always fun. Thank you for having me, Mandy.
You're welcome. Thank you.